Hi, my name's Keithamus. I'm the creator of Avalanche, which is an RTorrent front end, and I'm going to show you how to install it. First, I'm going to assume you've had some clue of what RTorrent is, and that you've got a spare system and some knowledge of command line access and the ability to install Ubuntu server. You can get Ubuntu from ubuntu.com, and you can go to the server part and go to download, and you'll be confronted with this page where you download the server. Anyway, I'm not going to show you how to install that. I'm just going to go straight into Putty, where I've already set up my server, and I'm going to start by installing the LAMP server. You can install the LAMP server by going in the options in the setup. If you haven't done that, don't worry, you can just do it by doing sudo task cell install lamp-server. And that's going to install our server that we need, and that's we will need the Apache and the PHP portions of that for this tutorial. I'm just going to pause this while this installs. Okay, so it's asked us for a MySQL root user. Doesn't matter for this tutorial because we're not going to use MySQL, so you can set whatever password you want, and it's going to continue to install. So that's mostly done. So now we're going to go on to our next task, which is to install the packages that we need for Avalanche to run, which is RTorrent, of course. We also need PHP 5 curl, that's a dependency on Avalanche. We also need libapache 2-mod-scgi, which is the scgi front end for RTorrent so that we can communicate with RTorrent. You should be familiar with this if you're using an Ubuntu server. If you don't know how to do this sort of thing, then I would leave it well alone. Right, so that's all done. It's quite a quick install. Next thing we need to do is configure RTorrent. So we need to go to the RTorrent website, which is, you can Google RTorrent and it will come up on the first result. And what we need to do is go to rtorrent.rc example, and when that loads, go to the bottom and click original format. If you right click that, copy link address, and then go back to our putty, and we're going to wget in quotes, paste that. That's pasted twice by the look of it. So yeah, we need to copy the link so we can download it straight to our server, and it'll take a few seconds to download. And what this does is it gives us our rtorrent.rc, which is the configuration file that RTorrent uses. So we're going to move that to .rtorrent.rc because that's what RTorrent will look for. It looks for the dot, so make sure you have the dot there. Next we're going to edit that because we need to change a few things. One of the things is you need to set a default download directory. So if you do Control W in Nano and search for download, press enter, and again, and again, and here we go. So we've got this directory and it's /, but it's commented out, so we need to uncomment that. We also need to take this one here, the session. We need to uncomment that as well, so I'm going to delete the hash there to uncomment that. If you want more help with that, you can just look at the website, and there's plenty of guides and everything to show you how to get through that. It's not difficult to pick up, but you might need to just read it for a few times, which is not a problem. I'm going to change the session directory to my home directory /.rtorrent. So I need to make a folder for that now. But first of all, before I do that, I'll explain that a bit later. I'm just going to go to the bottom here. I'm going to make a scgi port. You don't need this is just a comment, but you need to say scgi_port equals 127.0.0.1, add the port to 5001. What this is going to do is set up a communication server for RTorrent at this address here. This allows us to send commands directly to RTorrent without actually using the RTorrent interface, which allows us to allows Avalanche to communicate with RTorrent. So I'm going to save that out as Control O, enter, Control X. Next I'm going to create the directory, so if I don't do that, RTorrent will crash. That's the session directory I set in this here, where it says session RTorrent. So I just made that directory. So what that'll do is RTorrent will save all of the torrents there, as well as things like DHT information. I think it saves a lock file so that you can't open RTorrent more than once. So the next part will be to set up the Apache socket for RTorrent to communicate with. First of all, it's probably best to make sure that you have Apache working on your server. The quickest way to do that is just to go to your IP address, in my case 192.168.0.120, and you should receive this bit that says it works. That just means Apache's working, it's serving a default directory, which is exactly what we want. So the next thing I'm going to do is enable the mod for Apache to communicate with scgi handlers. So I'm using sudo a2enmod, which is Apache 2 enable mod scgi, and that'll enable it and tell me to restart. I'm not going to restart at the moment because the next thing I'm going to do is set up a password handler for the scgi so that people can't access it directly from the internet. So I'm going to sudo make the /etc Apache 2 passwords, I'm going to make two directories here. I'm going to make one called available and one called enabled. This follows the folder structure of Apache, its configuration. If you look, it's got mods enabled and mods available, and sites enabled and sites available, and the other way around. So I'm just creating passwords available and passwords enabled so that I can quickly toggle passwords off and on at will. So I'm going to go into the passwords available directory, and I'm going to make a password. So sudo htpasswd, that's ht password -c for the create flag, but make sure that you omit it when you want to add passwords. But for now we're going to use it. Give it the file name rtorrent.scgi, and my username is going to be rtorrent.scgi also. So I'm going to press enter. It's going to ask me for a password. I'm just going to put in a standard password. So what that's done, you can see it's created this file which has my username and my password. So we can refer to that when we make a new site. So we're going to go into our sites available, and we're going to make a new site. So sudo nano, and we're just going to call this one rtorrent. And in rtorrent we want scgi mount /rpc1 127.0.0.1 port 5001. This is the port that we used earlier, the address in rtorrent. This is the folder that we're going to point it to. So what this does is it simply turns the scgi port into a folder for Apache. Secondly, we're going to set up a new tag called location match, and it's going to be /rpc1. What this does is, in other words, whenever someone visits our rpc1, this is what we want it to do. We want it to have authentication. So we're going to have some basic authentication. The username must be rtorrent.scgi. If it's not that username, it won't be authenticated, and they're not allowed to use that rpc1 service. We're going to set the file, which is going to have our password in it, passwords enabled, and rtorrent.scgi. We're also going to say that you require a valid user. In other words, we want a username and password. We're also going to say the order is allow, deny, and allow from all. So you want your file to look exactly like this. You might want to make some changes, but we're just going to go with this for now because this is the easy way to do it. Right, so I'm going to save that out, Control-O, Enter, Control-X. Next task is to link the sites available. So we want to go back, we want to go into our sites enabled, and we want to link, so sudo ln-s for a symbolic link. We're going to go back a directory and into our sites available, and we're going to link our rtorrent site. What this does basically is, as I said earlier, you can quickly toggle between the available and the enabled sites in Apache. So you want to make sure that it's sitting in enabled, and it will work. Otherwise it won't work if it's in the available directory. We're going to do the same thing for our password. So sudo ln-s back a directory, passwords available, and rtorrent.scgi, and we should have our rtorrent.scgi there. So that's all done, and we're going to check that. So if I go to 192.168.120/rpc1, it's not working because I didn't restart. So sudo apache2 ctl, we want to restart this, okay? And we should get authentication. So I'm just going to put in my username and password, and hopefully, yeah, we get this internal server error, which is exactly what we want. Don't ask me why it says internal